What's going on, guys? Yeah, man, back again for the mid-season finale review of The Walking Dead, Episode 8, Season 7, Heart Still Beating. And although the episode title isn't directly referenced in the episode, at least I don't think, the mid-season finale also, once again, does a competent job at intertwining subplots, just like our previous episode, Sing Me a Song. So let's jump into it. So at the beginning of the episode, throughout this episode, we see an intertwining of subplots throughout multiple communities in a manner that seems a bit cluttered than the previous episode. But the overall conclusion of the episode is beyond satisfying. So let's get into it. So Maggie is at the hilltop and she's distraught, but we also see her evolve into this character to where she's getting recognition from other people, the common people at the hilltop. After what she did, she saved them from the walkers and she crushed the car. And basically, Gregory being a coward and not much of a leader, I would say, kind of getting envious about it. And he confronts Maggie and they have this, great banter. And he's just like, Gregory basically tells Maggie that don't take it to heart, kid. She responds with, don't get so annoyed by it in the first place. And he's just like, huh. And he just keeps rubbing this apple that he's just holding. And she says, are you going to eat that apple? And he's like, yeah, I'm going to eat it. And then one of the other hilltop members on the wall just basically tells him that she's pregnant, dude. Like, she's craving food. So he just throws it up to her. And, it's just kind of setting up the tone of what we'll inevitably see, that Maggie will become the leader of Hilltop, and rightfully so, because Gregory has been a terrible, just an atrocious leader. Remember last episode we saw, Daryl, someone slid Daryl a key, and it kept everybody wondering last week. Was it Dwight? Was it Sherry or Cheryl? We saw that Jesus was on top of that truck, and it comes pretty apparent that it was Jesus, because although it isn't explicitly shown, he helps him escape. But we see Daryl escape a little bit, some short, brief scenes of him leaving the area. He puts on clothes. There's a funny scene where he's just like eating peanut butter and just like indulging in that because he's been eating dog food throughout his entire imprisonment. So that was neat. We also see the continuing subplot, which I didn't really think was necessary. Was just Michonne. Most of her scenes are just like a gun holding it at the Savior's head when she's driving the car back to the sanctuary, just so Michonne will see where Negan is. And this is the part where it's just a bit of dramatic irony. We know something that the character doesn't. We know that Negan's not there, and Michonne thinks that he is, but he's actually at the Alexandria. So we see that partaking, and we also see we see Richard. See, the problem what leads to Negan's downfall, what dooms Negan ultimately, is that he gives people the freedom of association, and he inadvertently giving them cars for transportation so that they can go anywhere they want. Inadvertently, I mean, like, Negan doesn't intentionally want them to, collude and conspire, but this allows them to talk in secrecy and plan a rebellion. And this is how most rebellions start, whether it's in the modern age with social media, the freedom of association, and if you're living under a tyrannical fist of Negan, and that oppressiveness will just get people to rally and start a rebellion. And that's what will inevitably happen in the latter part of the season, which I'm beyond excited for. So Richard basically just explains and expresses his grievances with the Saviors, how they basically rob people of their free will, their cruel, demanding tax rate of 50% of all resources. And Carol basically, she's becoming a very enigmatic character psychologically. Like, she just wants to get everybody out of her hair. Like, she just wants to be left alone. And basically, they tell Richard that we can't do anything. But eventually that will be solved in episode 9, where Rick will venture on to the kingdom. Jesus will introduce him to Ezekiel, and they'll discuss their plights and align and assemble the rebellion. So I'm interested to see that in episode 9. But Richard is just kind of infuriated because his entire family has been killed previously before he encountered the kingdom community, and he believes that he truly believes Ezekiel is a strong leader, but he lacks the chivalry to engage in battle with the saviors, and that's that kind of chivalry that Rick is going to maintain or hone, that will give everybody the advantage, that will boost everybody's morale, because Rick really leads the rebellion just like he does in the comics. And we also see the subplot of Rick and Aaron scavenging for food, resources for the saviors, and it's quite an interesting scene. We haven't seen anything quite this harrowing in The Walking Dead before, I think. Besides Glenn's death and what later happens in the episode that I'll get into. But they get on the boat, and there's holes in the boat, and they're pushing it with their makeshift paddle sticks, Aaron and Rick, and Aaron accidentally falls in, which I wasn't suspecting at all. So good job on them. Aaron ends up surviving. He just goes underwater, and he just gets to a different area where there are dead walkers, I guess. And he gets back on the boat, and they make it. They find supplies. They find tons and tons of guns. And they use the boat to bring it back to land. And I'm pretty sure they leave the guns there, which were probably needed with the future rebellion that goes into plan. But they take all the resources, the substances, food, and everything. But they open one of the boxes, and there's a drawing of a middle finger saying, "You win, not really." And they leave the photo in there, which that will be an omen, a bad omen for Aaron later in the episode. So, yeah, that ends up happening, and we go back to Negan now. At the Alexandria, they make spaghetti, sitting down for dinner, and there's this really comical scene where just Negan's sitting there. He's like, "You know what? I'm not waiting for Rick anymore." And he lifts Lucille, and he puts it on the chair, and he's just like, "Lucille will take a spot, because Lucille is hungry." Well, Lucille's thirsty is one of those two, but it's just a comical scene, Negan being so charismatic. But yeah, now back to Rick and Aaron. They make it back. They see that Rick is kind of a little frightened because Negan is there, and they take the supplies out of the back. And this is where you really start to notice that not everybody living under Negan's rule is feared by Negan, living under him just due to servitude and fear. It's not just that. It's like some of them are actually sociopathic. Some of them are actually sadistic, like Negan. And this turns out to be quite evident in this scene of the episode where they find the middle finger, and one of the guys accuses Aaron of doing this, putting it in the box, and they just start beating the shit out of Aaron, and they make Rick watch. It's a really brutal scene, man. I can't begin to describe to you what it is like. I mean, it's just terrible. Like, Aaron just getting beaten and Rick being forced to watch. I mean, it's an emasculating scene for the audience and for Rick. So after that, we see probably one of the more iconic moments that are like it's kind of like the preamble to All Out War, and it's the dynamic between Spencer and Negan. And basically, Spencer is just kind of trying to woo Negan, I guess, just trying to get him to like him, try to win his appeal. And they're playing pool and everything, and basically he tells him, "Look, I want Rick to be killed. Not be killed, I want him out of power because his ego is taken over, I guess." And he kind of intentionally blames Rick for the deaths of his family, although he was not at fault for that. And this kind of, Negan delivers one of his most iconic lines that they've been matching like the iconography for dialogue, for like imagery. It's been a fantastic first part of the season. For the most part, there have been a few monotonous episodes. But he basically says, "Why not kill Rick and take the F over? You know why? Wait, no, that's not what I want." And then he's like, "'Cause you got no guts," and he slits his stomach open, and his intestines are falling out. It's an utterly gruesome scene. You have to go watch this scene. It's probably up there with Glenn's demise, just like unrelenting death. It's just like his intestines are falling out, and it looks very realistic. And I gotta give props, much props for the practical effects team. They do a fantastic job, especially with Glenn's death. How they had his eye bulging out of his bulbous eye socket. It was just, it was gruesome. It looked realistic, and that's what I also, one of the elements I love about this show is that they're able to execute uh, these fantastic and well crafted practical effects. So that ends up happening, and basically Rosita takes the time to utilize one of her, use that bullet that has Negan's name on it, and it ends up, she ends up shooting the bat, Lucille, and there's a hole in the bat. That ends up happening. I don't know how in the hell she could have missed. That's one scene that seemed implausible because she was about like 10 feet away. There's no way she could have missed. But basically, that happened in the comics. So that kind of echoed the comics, but Carl was the one who took Rosita's spot, I guess, and Rosita is the one who took it in the television series. So after that happened, Negan was infuriated, and he's kind of got a gravelly yelling voice, which I guess is he's kind of plagued by that because of his age. He's like in his 50s. Basically, Negan orders Arette to kill one of the Alexandrians, and she picks randomly and she kills Olivia. Hits her like right in the forehead, or it was under her eye. God, it was terrible. So Olivia ends up dying. 2 fatal deaths this episode. Spencer and Olivia. I think Olivia's was more tragic and unsuspecting for the audience members because honestly, I was expecting Rosita to die because, she attempted botched assassination attempt to kill Negan. So that ended up happening. And then Rick comes around and he's just like, he basically tells Negan, you need to take your shit and leave. And Negan basically complies. He's like, yeah, I put him through enough harm. And, we get this really great, palpable, emotionally palpable shot that has similarly been seen in episode 1, where we just see this close-up shot of Andrew Lincoln's face portraying Rick, and he's channeling this emotional side of Rick, but his eyes are so penetrating that they just manage to emote a plausible representation of how Rick's feeling. And I think that's something that is difficult to do for an actor, and I think that's probably why Andrew Lincoln is probably one of the greatest actors on the show. For the longest time, he's managed to grow out of that ugly crying phase in season 3. I think we know what we're talking about, Laurie's death. That was terrible. But he's managed to channel that subtle cry, and it's incredible, like, how he manages to channel, like, an emasculating Rick and someone who's just enfeebled. So after that, they leave. So by the end of the episode, Maggie is looking over the hilltop walls, and he sees that Rick is there, Rick and the group are there, and they come through the hilltop gates, they reunite, and he sees Daryl, and it's just this great moment that is, it really cultivates this solidarity and feeling like unity. We're together again, because Daryl escaped. He gives Rick back his revolver, which is a great moment because, the revolver is just kind of iconic weapon for Rick, as like a lightsaber is for Luke Skywalker. So a great moment to see that, but it was just such a moment filled with solidarity that manages to, cultivate like such a strong, evocative moment in the end of the episode. And I think that was great because we get to see Rick get his vitality back, his chivalry. He's getting it back because he's motivated to take out Negan, because Negan has pushed him over the brink. He pushed him too far. And when you push someone too far, they're done being oppressed. They don't care how many deaths will be the toll of deaths. They just want to kill you, and they want to end the oppression. So Negan took it too far. He put it over the edge, and now we're going to see an all-out war in the latter part of this season. I'm excited to see that. Love this episode. Probably, I think this was probably the preeminent episode of the season. I know episode 1 was very impressive as well. Episode 1, episode 4, and episodes 7 and 8. 4 episodes were great. The other ones were very monotonous, and they had an insipid plot progression. So, I hope for a great latter part of the season. Let me know your guys' thoughts in this comment section below, but this was by far the optimal episode of this season. But yeah, I'll see you guys next time.